Hello and welcome to another C1 video with me, Steve. Today we are looking at the use of English part 3, word transformation, where they give you the root, as you can see, and you have to transform it in some way. Make it negative, make it a different type of word, a verb, make it a noun, and so on. It looks like that. That's what you need to be practicing. That's what we'll be doing today. So, how? Why are you watching this video? What important information can I give you? Well, I'd say first of all, I think this is the most preparable part of the exam. I'm not sure preparable is a word, but hey, anything's a word in English if people say it, meaning you can prepare it with that suffix. You can prepare it, you can practice it. It's very formulaic, so the more you practice, the better you're going to get. The other great advantage, which I haven't mentioned here, is that lots of the words are Latin. They come from Latin, so they are similar in different languages. If you don't speak a Latin language, I'm very sorry, but you're going to have to work a bit harder. There are typical words that are repeated, some slightly more irregular ones, like arrive, arrival, survive, survival, approve, approval. The typical patterns: analyze, analysis, rely, reliable. So you learn these common ones, you start to see them coming up again and again, and you learn, more importantly, the patterns. So the patterns they have on the exam of making, for example, adverbs, as we just saw, adjectives, adverbs. But the main one for me is pan. Remember pan, because pan means plurals, adverbs, and negatives. Let's go into a little bit more detail. What am I talking about with this? Well, on the exam, there will normally be a word that needs to be in plural due to the sentence structure. Here's your example: have found a new type of virus. And the word is research. People who do research they are called researchers. Researchers is obviously the answer. It must be plural because it says have. If it said a researcher has found, okay. But check all your answers for plural, because so many times I see a student who's got the right word, but they forgot to use the plural. You don't get the mark because that's part of the grammar of our great language, and it's part of this exam. Then adverbs. This one, 99.9% of exams, you're going to have some kind of adjective to adverb or root word to adverb transformation. So you need to remember the rules, meaning if it ends in L, you need to double it. If it ends in Y, it becomes ILY, and some irregular ones as well. Learn your irregular adverbs. Example, it could revolutionize the field. Well, how is it going to revolutionize? We've got a verb. We are describing how the verb happens. We need an adverb. The adverb of potential is with a double L, potentially. Quite an easy one. But that process of thinking like that also applies for more difficult ones. It's the process that you need to practice, you need to be comfortable, familiar, good at. And finally, negatives. Again, 99% of exams, there's going to be negative words. They give you the root. You might need to transform it in another way, but you need to make it negative. So you need to know which suffix fits, which prefix fits, because we're talking about negatives. Normally prefixes, they come before, that's why it's pre. In, un, dis, and so on. So this one, a biography that's not authorized by the person it's about, is not official. Is it? It's not an official biography because he didn't authorize it. It's unofficial. So from office to official to unofficial, using negatives because of the context of the sentence. So these tricks are going to apply to many questions in the exam. Not all of them. Some of them will just be words that you have to know, but many of them you can learn how to do it. Which is what we're going to do today. We're going to do it a bit differently. We're going to start with one exam, then we're going to do a little practice activity, then we'll do another exam to see if the practice activity has had some effect, to see if practicing has helped. So pause it here and try and do this one about souvenirs. Word on the right, transform. Obviously the word corresponds to the same line. You don't need to move around any words. Just transform the word. Number one is aware, transform it. And here are the answers. Number one, a very common one. We need the noun of aware, which is awareness. We are focusing awareness on something, awareness. Number two, not a common one, a very difficult one. The adjective talking about material goods are earthly goods. You don't see this a lot, but referring to tangible, material, earthly goods. Sometimes we make an adjective with ly, like friendly. It's an adjective, not an adverb. A little bit irregular, but sometimes you need to know irregulars for C1. Number 3, much easier, same in Latin languages, just make sure you spell it correctly. Existence with an E. Number 4, again, a bit easier. What kind of snob were you? A massive snob. Talking about souvenirs, by the way. Again, try to understand in general what it's about. It's about souvenirs. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan. Memories should be in your mind, not on a bit of plastic, a kitsch bit of plastic, but whatever floats your boat. Number 5, what are you bringing back from your holidays? You are bringing back something. The word something that reminds you is a reminder, but you will notice there is no article here, so it must be plural. We are talking about such kitsch reminders. So your plural question, be careful with the plurals. But now I'm more respectful because of an incredible lolly in the shape of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Wow, what an incredible piece of souvenir that has changed his mind. It is so appealing. Quite a regular adjective, isn't it, really? We make the adjective that produces the feeling with ing. Boring, interesting, appealing. This one, a good context one. You bought some souvenir made out of driftwood at a petrol station. Petrol station, you wouldn't normally buy a souvenir there. It's unexpected from the context. And the last one, the is the clue there. Superlative, the strangest locations. So as always, you're aiming for 5 out of 8. How did you do? This one, fairly typical C1 exam, some quite difficult, some quite easy. Then overall it gets you to about C1. Let's see if we can improve. Here's my beautiful wall art that I designed myself to practice this. I've got a load of common root words, and your activity is to write sentences like those you would find in the exam using these words, really thinking about how we need to transform words. If you're doing this in class, swap them with a partner. If you're doing it by yourself, it's great practice to write some sentences by yourself to learn how to transform them, or send them to me, or send them to yourself in the future, something like that. My example, Eddie is so he never does what he promises. The word is rely. We're given the verb. The adjective is reliable. I think, reliable. No, of course not. He never does what he promises. He's unreliable. Of course he is. So if you write some sentences like this, pass them to a partner, mark each other's, you're getting lots and lots of practice. You might need to Google some things or to search for some things to think about how to transform these words, but that's all practice. That's the practice you want. How do you make these into verbs? How do you make them into nouns? How do you make them into adjectives and then adverbs? How do you make them negative? Are there different meanings you can add on to make the word slightly different? To do and to redo, to undo. There's different meanings you can add on to some of these words. It's just a matter of exploring them, trying to assimilate them, trying to make them go in by practicing. Another nice little trick I have with this list of words that I've made is using the old random item picker, one of my great classroom tools. Thank you, Andrew Hedges. I owe you a great debt. I've been using your website for a very long time, but this is good because we can pick one at random. Support. Okay, support is a nice one because a person who supports you is supportive. So you should be able to do this. You should be able to think, okay, support, supportive, well supported, other options like that. I don't know, support, supportable, I'm not really sure is common, but support, supportive to me sounds like a very typical C1 transformation. True, I think I've got this later in the PowerPoint, but true is a little bit irregular, isn't it? The easy one that you probably won't get on a C1 exam is true, truth, although it's irregular. But then what about a person who always tells the truth? They are truthful. Now we're getting a bit more C1. And how does that person speak when they're being very honest and speaking from the heart? They speak truthfully. Now we're really thinking about how C1 works when we can do this. And obviously I know this, but you can find this out. You can do this through activities. You can learn. All right, so you've had a bit of practice. You've made some sentences. You've swapped them. You've learned lots of these common C1 expressions for part 3. Let's do another exam and see how we're doing. This one is about a mammoth, meaning the old hairy elephant that someone found. Go ahead. And the answers are coming now. How, astonishing. Okay, adjective astonishing. Now, how is it preserved? How? We need an adverb. It was perfectly preserved. Number 2 is a little bit irregular, but what is left of Jenya? His, her remains. You just have to know some of these. Number 3, well, I said this is a typical one, analysis. We need a noun because they are going, what are they doing? They're taking it there for something, for analysis. And Jenya only weighed 500 kilos. She'd been on a diet. How much smaller is that? How much smaller? How again? We need an adverb. It is considerably smaller. How do we make adverbs? Consider, considerable, considerably. What killed Jenya was not his size. I've been misgendering Jenya. I apologise. But a missing left tusk that made him for fights. Well, a mammoth without a tusk. Oof, this is a bit emasculating, a bit embarrassing. He's not fit. He's unfit, of course. Not just against other mammoths, but against human what? Well, we need a type of people. The way we make people nouns, teach, teacher, sing, singer, football, footballer, is with the ER. And again, hope no one fell for this, you need the S, because it doesn't say a human hunter, a specific, a human, no, it's talking about human hunters in general, and then it says were settling, so it must be plural. It might have been the result of a, to confront. How do we make this noun? It's a confrontation with shun, very common for making nouns. And as I've just said, it's very common because number 8 is the same. The noun of extinct is extinction with I-T-I-O-N again, but obviously no double T, we don't double T's for T-I-O-N. Hopefully you did a bit better. Again, it's a very typical C1 part 3. Some that are a little bit irregular, but some that follow the patterns, the tricks that I'm trying to teach you. This is very, as I said, preparable. You can find lots of sentences like this. You can keep your notes of what am I doing to this word. I'm taking the word guard, which is normally a noun, and I'm making it into, well, another noun. Could be like an adjective in this sentence, but normally a noun. Guardian angel is the expression. And we can do this for all of these. Transparency is the noun. Nominations, great one for plural this, because we're talking about the Oscars. There's not only one nomination, is there? There's lots. So context, it must be plural. Insight, really common. Insight into something, not just for part 3. You can also find that on part 2. Insight into. Number 5, I said this before, it's the same as arrive. Arrive, arrival, approve, approval, because it's excellent behaviour. Be careful. If it said appalling behaviour, disapproval. So I'm always thinking about how do I transform these words for the sentence. The what still exists would be slavery, jewellery, depending on if you spell normally or in a strange British way. Number 8's a good one, because you see looked and you think stunning. She looked stunning. It stunned me. She was stunning. But read the whole sentence. Stunning, beautiful doesn't make any sense. How did she look? How beautiful was she? Stunningly beautiful. Number 9, this is a good one. So the verb refuge, like to take refuge, or really it's a noun, isn't it, to a place of refuge. It's like employ, employer, employee. Well, refugee is the same thing. The person seeking refuge is a refugee. The person who is employed is an employee. The person being interviewed is an interviewee. I'm not sure you'd get that on a C1 exam, but it's the same pattern. Pregnant, slightly irregular. Pregnancy is the state, what you experience. Something that is served, some drinks, they are refreshments. 12, the cost doesn't matter. Without regard for the cost. Without is less. Of course, without regard, regardless. Without care, careless. So again, patterns. What do these suffixes mean? 13, discretion, meaning don't tell anyone my secret. That is irregular, isn't it? Discreet discretion, that's a tough one. 14 is the same pattern as approve, refusal for the noun. Disciplinary are going to be what measures you take. Number 16, I couldn't speak, I was speechless. Number 17, very common word, but how do you make a noun of it? Readiness, battle readiness, you sometimes talk about. Number 18, a very good irregular one. When we're talking about more numbers, it is to outnumber somebody. Also a very good old sitcom on the BBC, Outnumbered, about a family and their kids. Number 19, the verb is store, the noun is storage. And number 20, this one's easy, isn't it? Sign, signature. You've seen this a lot, surely, when you are signing documents for your important business contracts. So lots of practice like this online. These were just 20 that I found. You can find hundreds. The important thing is the process of what am I doing for each question? Verb, noun, adverb, negative, all these kind of things. Practice that, practice common ones, and you'll learn enough to be confident on part 3. My last tip then is to keep practicing by yourself. And it's when you're reading anything, think about families of words, especially variations of words. How would you make it negative? How would you make it an adverb, adverbial, and so on? Because you will find these words everywhere. Like I keep saying, Cambridge exam is made from normal English. So when you are immersed in normal English, if you are thinking in a smart way of a C1 exam, you can practice for it with almost any material. Example that I found before, true, truthful, truly, untrue. You're going to see the word true when you're reading a news article. But how do you transform this word? If you're on your day to study part 3, looking for words that I can transform, writing them down, looking them up, looking for the meaning. Good one to study, I have to mention this, measurement words. This is always on the exam. I mean things like long is an adjective, the noun is length or longevity. If we're talking about duration in time, normally we talk about longevity. Length, more of physical length. You can speak lengthily. He spoke so lengthily that the audience started falling asleep. And you can lengthen something or elongate something. So we're making all these different words from the root word. And as always, there are some patterns there. Length, depth, width. But there's also some you just have to learn. A shortage, when there's not enough food, there's a shortage of food. Shortness, when we're talking about being short of breath, shortness of breath. So there's a mixture of learning patterns, learning words. But the main thing that I keep saying is taking notes all the time. Clearly defined, what I'd recommend to my students is part of your notebook is part 3. Some of it is part 1, part 2 and part 4. But since we're on part 3, and you've just got beautiful color-coded columns of words and how to transform them and example sentences. And you look at it before the exam, you look at it so they keep going in. Okay, I think that's enough part 3. Hopefully that's been helpful. And next time, part 4. That's going to be a challenge. Thanks, goodbye.